The night air over the Nile still held a little coolness. Dark water moved slowly between its banks. Reeds bent gently. Somewhere in the distance, a bird made a quiet sound and then returned to silence. The sky above ancient Egypt was not completely black. Before sunrise, there was always a soft change. The darkness became thinner. Shapes slowly appeared. Palm trees became shadows with edges. Mud brick walls gathered color. And inside a temple storage house, long before the first visitors arrived and before the day became hot, someone was already awake. His work would begin with cloth. Not making cloth. Not wearing cloth. Not selling cloth. Counting cloth. This was not unusual. Temples in ancient Egypt held enormous amounts of linen. Linen-covered statues. Linen-wrapped offerings. Linen became clothing for workers and priests. Linen-covered tables. Linen protected sacred objects from dust. Fresh linen appeared in ceremonies. Old linen returned to storage. Clean linen moved in and out each day. And someone had to know exactly where every folded piece had gone. So before sunrise, sandals touched cool stone. A worker entered quietly. He carried no tools except a simple wooden counting board, a reed brush, and memory trained through repetition. The room smelled faintly of dry fiber. Not unpleasant. Warm. Dusty. Clean in a very old way. Rows of shelves reached across the walls. Bundles rested in careful stacks. Some were tied. Some folded. Some wrapped again in protective cloth. There was no hurry. There was almost never hurry. Temple work moved according to routine. Routine was dependable. Routine brought order. Order brought calm. The worker stood still for a moment. Outside, morning birds slowly woke. Inside, silence stayed. Then he walked to the first shelf. He touched one folded bundle. He pressed gently. Not too old. Still usable. He untied the cord. Opened the cloth. Counted. 1, 2, 3, 4. His voice stayed low. Almost whispered. The numbers moved into air and disappeared. Another bundle. Again. 1, 2, 3. Again. 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 Hours could pass this way. To someone arriving from elsewhere, it might seem impossible. An entire day. Cloth. Numbers. Shelves. But daily life in ancient Egypt often moved in these quiet circles. Many people repeated almost identical actions for years. Farmers walked the same fields. Boatmen traveled familiar water. Millers turned grain. Bakers shaped dough. Scribes copied signs. And temple workers counted linen. Outside, the horizon slowly brightened. Sunlight entered the world carefully. The stone floors remained cool for a little while longer. Elsewhere in the temple grounds, others began waking. A servant crossed a courtyard carrying water jars balanced carefully. Someone swept dust from an entrance. Someone prepared grain. Someone checked oil lamps. A baker lit fire. Soft smoke entered the morning air. The smell of bread appeared. The linen worker continued. His fingers moved slowly over folded edges. Each cloth had small differences. Some were thick. Some light. Some rough. Some soft from years of washing. Temple linen came from fields where flax had grown beside the Nile. Months before this morning, farmers had planted seeds. They waited. Harvested. Workers soaked stems. Separated fibers. Twisted strands. Wove cloth. Washed cloth. Folded cloth. Transported cloth. Stored cloth. Now all of that labor rested quietly in these shelves. Every folded piece carried many hands inside it. The worker probably never thought about this every day. But sometimes, while counting, perhaps his thoughts wandered. Perhaps he wondered who had woven this particular cloth. Perhaps someone in a nearby village. Perhaps someone already old. Perhaps someone who had folded linen thousands of times before. His work remained simple. Count. Record. Move. Count again. Occasionally another worker entered. They spoke quietly. A few words. Questions. No long conversations. Temple work respected calm. Voices stayed low. The room remained peaceful. As morning continued, warmth slowly arrived. Stone floors changed. Air became thicker. Sunlight reached through narrow openings. Dust became visible. Tiny particles floated quietly. The worker drank water. Returned. Counted. At another shelf he noticed something unusual. One bundle held fewer cloths than expected. Nothing dramatic. No mystery. Probably removed yesterday. Still, records mattered. He touched the board. Made a note. Someone later would compare counts. Someone else might search another room. Eventually numbers would match. And if they matched, the world stayed orderly. Ancient temples depended on this invisible work. People often imagine temples as places of ceremony. But temples also needed storage. Cleaning. Cooking. Repairs. Laundry. Deliveries. Schedules. Quiet workers moved behind every polished surface. Someone always folded. Someone always counted. Someone always carried. The linen room became warmer. Outside, the day had fully begun. Footsteps increased. Voices drifted. Wood scraped. Animals moved. Yet inside this room, time remained slow. Bundle after bundle. Shelf after shelf. The worker developed rhythms. Untie. Open. Count. Fold. Tie. Move. Sometimes hands worked while thoughts drifted elsewhere. Perhaps toward home. Perhaps toward breakfast. Maybe bread and onions. Maybe beer watered lightly. Maybe figs. Maybe nothing yet. Workers often waited. Days began early. Meals arrived gradually. Heat continued rising. Sweat appeared. But cloth work was still gentler than many jobs outside. No stone lifting. No field labor. No heavy boats. Only standing. Walking. Counting. Yet standing all day has its own tiredness. Feet ache quietly. Back stiffens. Eyes blur. Numbers become soft. One stack begins to resemble another. So workers developed habits. Touch each fold. Pause. Repeat numbers. Never rush. Losing count meant beginning again. And beginning again could feel endless. Morning stretched. At some point sunlight crossed the floor and reached the shelves. Linen edges glowed pale gold. The room became unexpectedly beautiful. Nothing grand. Only folded cloth in quiet light. But many ordinary moments become beautiful when no one interrupts them. The worker continued. Outside the temple walls, village life unfolded. Children carried water. Farmers worked fields. Fishermen checked nets. Women prepared grain. Animals searched shade. Merchants opened small spaces for trade. Dust lifted from roads. Life moved slowly under heat. And somewhere inside all of this movement sat a room full of linen, waiting to be counted. By midday the air became heavy. Workers rested when possible. Shade mattered. Water mattered. Movement slowed. Even voices became quieter. The linen worker sat briefly. His knees bent carefully. He drank. Closed his eyes for a moment. Not sleeping. Only resting. Then back to work. One shelf remained. Then another. Then another. Ancient work rarely arrived with excitement. It arrived in layers. Quiet layers. One task after another. And so the day continued. Count. Fold. Record. Walk. Count. Outside, the Nile kept moving. Inside, linen waited. And the worker kept going. Because tomorrow there would still be shelves. And more cloth. And another quiet morning beginning before the light touched the river. By the middle of the day, even the air inside the linen room seemed to move more slowly. Sunlight entered through narrow openings and stretched across the floor in pale shapes. Dust drifted through the light and remained suspended there, almost without movement, as though the room itself had become too warm to hurry. The worker stood beside another shelf. His hands already remembered the work. He no longer needed to think about each movement. Untie. Open. Count. Straighten. Fold. Tie. Set aside. The body learned routines before the mind did. Years of similar days had taught his fingers how linen should feel. Fresh cloth resisted slightly. Older cloth softened. Very old cloth became thinner and carried tiny signs of long use. Corners changed shape. Edges loosened. Threads separated quietly. He could notice these things without trying. A cloth could pass through his hands for only a moment and still tell him something. Not in words. Only through texture. Temple linen lived many lives. Some pieces remained hidden in storage for long periods. Others moved constantly. One day wrapped around offerings. Another day covering tables. Another day folded again and placed back into darkness. Nothing stayed in one place forever. Even cloth traveled. The worker reached for another stack. This shelf held smaller folded pieces. Careful work. Small mistakes became easier here. His finger touched each edge. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pause. Again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. His voice stayed soft. Numbers belonged to the room and nowhere else. Outside, somewhere deeper in the temple grounds, a low sound of activity continued. Footsteps. A distant wooden door. Someone speaking. Someone carrying something heavy. The sounds arrived softly through stone. Nothing disturbed the rhythm. At this hour many workers searched for shade. A gardener poured water slowly over dry ground. Servants crossed courtyards with lowered heads. Someone sat beside a wall eating bread. Someone else removed sandals and rested tired feet. Heat changed people. Movement became economical. Nobody wasted effort. The linen worker remained inside. This was one reason storage work could feel almost desirable. There was still heat. But there was shade. And shade became valuable. He walked carefully toward another row. The stone beneath his feet held warmth now. His sandals made quiet sounds. He passed shelves marked with signs and records. Simple notes. Nothing decorative. Ancient Egypt depended on records more than people often imagine. Someone always knew where grain belonged. Someone knew how many jars existed. Someone knew which fields had produced well. Someone knew how much cloth remained. Order lived quietly behind ordinary things. Without records, routines became uncertain. Without routines, work became harder. The worker stopped beside a shelf that held long folded lengths. These were heavier. He lifted one. Weight pulled gently downward. He unfolded part of it. Linen opened like still water. Pale. Simple. Quiet. For a moment he held it open. Sunlight passed through parts of the weave. Tiny irregular threads became visible. Someone had made this. Months ago. Maybe years. A person somewhere had stood beside a loom. Hands moving back and forth. Back and forth. Slowly creating this exact cloth. Perhaps while speaking quietly. Perhaps in silence. Perhaps while children moved nearby. Perhaps during heat very much like today's. Now their work rested in his hands. Then he folded it again. Placed it back. Continued counting. No ceremony. Only continuation. The day moved. Time inside storage rooms felt different. Hours did not announce themselves. There were no bells. No clocks. Only changing light. Changing shadows. Body feeling. Hunger. Thirst. The worker eventually noticed his shoulders. A dull tiredness. Not pain. Only accumulation. Small movements repeated many times. Even quiet work leaves traces. He rolled one shoulder slowly. Drank water. Sat briefly. Nearby rested another worker. Not a linen counter. Someone from storage transport. Their conversation stayed short. Simple things. Questions about deliveries. Comments about weather. Maybe mention of family. No urgency. Then silence returned naturally. People in hot places often save words. Speaking becomes effort. Quiet becomes comfortable. Outside the temple walls, midday stretched across the land. Fields near the Nile shimmered faintly. Farmers rested under simple shade. River boats drifted. Fishing nets dried. Children looked for cooler places. Animals gathered where shadows remained. Some people slept briefly. Not deeply. Just enough to soften the afternoon. Inside homes made from mud brick, rooms stayed dim. A person kneaded dough. Another repaired sandals. Someone sat near a doorway watching light move across the floor. Life did not stop. It only slowed. Inside the linen room, counting continued. One stack held 23. Another held 18. One record needed correction. Nothing important. Still worth noting. The worker carefully marked changes. Repetition can become peaceful. Not because the work becomes easy, but because expectations disappear. You know what comes next. You know what tomorrow brings. There is comfort in predictability. Ancient lives often held very little surprise. The river rose. The river lowered. Fields changed. Work repeated. Meals arrived. Night returned. Years passed. A person could spend decades becoming skilled at one ordinary thing. This worker may have become known quietly among others. Someone reliable. Someone who rarely lost count. Someone trusted with records. Not famous. Not remembered. Yet important. Entire temples rested on people like this. The afternoon slowly stretched longer. Sunlight shifted. The brightest heat began to soften. Not cooler yet. Only changing. The worker reached higher shelves. He used a simple stool. Slowly. Carefully. Dust gathered there. He brushed cloth gently before opening bundles. Small clouds appeared and disappeared. His hands carried pale traces of linen fiber. His arms moved steadily. Count. 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 Somewhere nearby someone laughed once. Very briefly. Then quiet again. The room accepted every sound and softened it. As the day moved further, workers elsewhere began thinking of evening. Of returning home. Of meals. Of sitting outside. Of river air. Of resting. The linen workers still had shelves remaining. No frustration. Just awareness. Work existed until finished. He continued. One bundle surprised him. Inside rested cloth folded unusually neatly. Older work perhaps. Or someone especially careful. He paused. Touched the edge. There are small moments in repetitive labor when another person's attention becomes visible. Someone long ago folded this with precision. No reason. No reward. Only care. He folded it the same way. Placed it back. Continued. The room gradually changed color. Sunlight became softer. Dust became golden. Shadows stretched. The day began leaning quietly toward evening. Still there were numbers. Still there were shelves. Still there was linen. And beyond the walls of the temple, the Nile continued flowing through the warm land, carrying reeds, reflections, boats, and the passing hours without ever seeming to hurry. Inside the linen rooms, the worker noticed the change first through the light. The bright white sunlight that had filled the shelves earlier had become warmer now. The color of the cloth changed with it. Pale linen slowly turned golden. Nothing else changed. The shelves remained full. The room remained quiet. The counting continued. But afternoon light always made work feel different. Morning belonged to beginning. Midday belonged to endurance. Late afternoon belonged to finishing slowly. The worker stood near the back of the room where the shelves became older. This section was cooler. Less visited. The air carried a dry smell of linen, wood, and years. Some bundles had remained untouched for longer periods. Their cords were tighter. Their folds more settled. Dust rested gently on top. He brushed one bundle clean with the side of his hand. A thin cloud appeared and disappeared in the warm air. He untied it carefully. Inside were folded cloths arranged with unusual precision. Straight edges. Even spacing. Whoever folded them had taken time. Not because anyone asked. Not because anyone would praise them. Only because this was their work. In places like this, small acts of care became invisible. And yet they remained. Years later another worker could still notice. The worker began counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pause. 6, 7, 8. His voice stayed almost silent. Some numbers disappeared before reaching the walls. Outside, footsteps crossed stone. Someone carried jars. Someone closed a wooden door. Somewhere farther away came the low sound of grinding grain. Steady. Circular. Ancient sounds moved slowly. Nothing arrived all at once. Everything repeated. The worker finished the bundle and tied it again. His hands moved gently. Temple cloth was valuable. Not rare in the sense of treasure, but expensive in time. Fields. Harvest. Water. Fiber. Weaving. Transport. Storage. Every folded piece represented labor stretched across seasons. Nothing in this room appeared suddenly. He walked toward another shelf. His knees felt slightly heavier now. Not pain. Only the quiet weight of standing all day. The kind of tiredness that arrives slowly enough that you hardly notice until evening. He paused beside the doorway. Outside, the courtyard had changed. The hottest part of the day was ending. Workers crossed slowly. A servant carried baskets. Someone swept dust from stone. A group sat briefly in shade sharing simple food. Flat bread. Maybe dried fish. Maybe onions. Water. Small ordinary meals. No celebration. Only enough. A few birds crossed overhead. Palm leaves moved slightly. The river breeze had started returning. Not strong. Just enough to remind people that evening would eventually come. The worker watched for only a moment. Then returned inside. There was still work. Storage rooms always held more work. He reached another row of shelves. These cloths had labels attached. Simple records. Marks made by scribes. Ancient scribes often spent long hours seated cross-legged, writing quietly while others carried, counted, lifted, and cleaned. Their work connected the entire rhythm of daily life. Someone wrote records. Someone trusted records. Someone checked records. And here, one worker confirmed that numbers and reality still matched. He opened another bundle. Counted. The numbers aligned. Good. Next. Again. Another matched. Again. One was different. He counted twice. Same result. Not concern. Only correction. He adjusted the record. Nothing dramatic. This happened. Cloth moved. People forgot. Records changed. Order returned. Outside the room, the smell of baking drifted briefly through the air. Somewhere nearby, evening preparations had started. Bread ovens warmed. Meals slowly formed. Workers began thinking of returning home. Homes made from mud brick gathered warmth during the day and released it slowly after sunset. People would sit near doorways. Children would move through narrow paths. Someone would wash. Someone would mend clothing. Someone would simply sit. Quiet was part of evening. The linen worker probably thought of these things too. Not constantly, but sometimes. Maybe he imagined sitting outside with tired feet. Maybe river air. Maybe simple conversation. Maybe silence. He continued. The shelves slowly became emptier of unchecked bundles. Progress in repetitive work appears quietly. No grand feeling. Just fewer things left. The room itself seemed calmer. Late sunlight stretched farther across the floor. The shadows of shelves became longer. Dust glowed softly. The worker noticed small details. A folded edge. A loose thread. A repaired tier. Evidence of ordinary people. Temple life often appears perfect in surviving images. Clean lines. Order. Ceremony. But real life held repairs. Wear. Sweat. Fatigue. Things were used. Fixed. Used again. Nothing escaped time. He unfolded one piece and found a careful patch sewn into the corner. Small stitches. Patient work. Someone had repaired instead of replacing. Practical. Quiet. He touched the stitches briefly. Folded the cloth. Returned it. Outside, sounds became softer. Workers left gradually. Footsteps reduced. The courtyard opened. Long shadows covered stone. The sun lowered. Its light became deep and warm. Inside the storage room, brightness faded. The worker brought a small oil lamp closer. Not because darkness had arrived. Only because details became harder to see. The lamp added another layer to the room. Soft yellow light. Small moving shadows. Stone became warmer in color. Linen looked softer. The atmosphere changed completely. Morning belonged to air. Evening belonged to light. He continued counting under the lamp. 1, 2, 3. The work felt slower now. Not because he rushed less. Because evening naturally softened movement. Nobody moved quickly when tired. His feet shifted. His back stretched. His eyes blinked longer. Still, shelf by shelf, the work moved forward. Outside the temple walls, life was changing too. Farmers returned. Boats reached shore. Fishing nets were gathered. Children settled. Cooking fires appeared. Smoke lifted into fading sky. The Nile reflected long bands of gold. Voices lowered. Animals rested. Day slowly released its hold. Inside, only a few bundles remained. The worker noticed this without celebration. Work ending was simply part of routine. Tomorrow would bring another beginning. Perhaps more cloth would arrive. Perhaps records would change. Perhaps entire shelves would need recounting. Nothing stayed finished forever. But for today, the room was becoming complete. He opened another bundle. Counted slowly. Folded carefully. Placed it back. Then stood quietly for a moment. The room looked almost unchanged. Shelves. Linen. Dust. Light. Yet all day his hands had moved through it. Touching hundreds of folds. Confirming order. Passing hours. No monument would remember him. No carved wall would tell the story. But days like this built the quiet structure beneath ancient life. Someone counted. Someone folded. Someone kept things where they belonged. Outside, evening continued approaching. Inside, the lamp flickered softly beside shelves of linen. And the worker reached for the next bundle. The worker stood for a moment with one hand resting lightly against the shelf. Not from exhaustion alone. Sometimes after many hours of repeating one movement, the body naturally pauses. Not to think. Not to rest deeply. Only to become still. The room around him remained unchanged. Rows of folded linen. Low shelves. Bundles tied with cords. Dust settled quietly in corners. The small oil lamp near the records gave a warm circle of light. Beyond that circle, shapes softened. The room felt older in the evening. Storage rooms always seemed older after sunset. During daylight they belonged to work. By evening they belonged to silence. The worker reached for another bundle. Its cloth wrapping felt cooler now. He untied the cord carefully. The knot resisted slightly. His fingers worked patiently. No force. Nothing in storage work benefited from hurry. Eventually the knot loosened. The folded pieces inside appeared. He counted. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pause. 5, 6. Then folded them again. The rhythm continued. Outside, footsteps crossed the courtyard less often. The busiest hours had passed. People were returning home. Temple workers left in small groups. Some walked together. Some alone. Sandals moved over packed earth. Dust lifted and settled again. Conversations remained quiet at this time of day. Energy became precious. People saved it. Near the outer walls, someone was sweeping. Long slow movements. Dust gathering into lines. Ancient days always ended with cleaning. Sweeping. Putting tools away. Covering supplies. Closing doors. Preparing for tomorrow. Order in the evening made morning easier. Inside the storage room, the worker made another mark on the board. Records remained neat. Simple. Reliable. Numbers lined beside symbols. Nothing decorative. Nothing intended to survive centuries. Only practical information. Yet for the people living then, these small records mattered more than monuments. Records meant enough cloth. Enough grain. Enough oil. Enough supplies for tomorrow. Daily life depended on details. The worker moved farther into the room. This section had little natural light even during the day. Now the lamp became more important. Its flame moved gently. Small shadows shifted across folded linen. The room felt quieter than before. Not because there were fewer sounds. Because evening changes how people listen. By this hour, attention becomes softer. Thoughts slow. The worker unfolded another piece. This cloth felt older. Not damaged. Only used. Repeated washing had softened it. Edges rounded slightly. He held one corner. Turned it toward the lamp. Threads crossed in tiny patterns. Thousands of movements hidden inside simple cloth. Hands harvesting flax. Hands separating fibers. Hands weaving. Hands washing. Hands folding. Now his own hands counting. Many ordinary people connected without meeting. He folded it again. Placed it carefully back. Outside the temple, village life moved toward night. Cooking fires became stronger. The smell of warm bread drifted across narrow paths. Someone stirred a pot. Someone carried water for evening washing. Children who had spent the day moving through courtyards and dusty roads became quieter. Families gathered. Simple meals appeared. People sat low to the ground. Some spoke. Some remained silent. A person might describe work. Another might simply eat and rest. After long days, silence often felt better than conversation. The worker likely knew this rhythm well. His own evening waited somewhere beyond these walls. A home. A meal. A place to sit. Maybe family. Maybe neighbors. Maybe only quiet. But first, there were shelves. He continued. One stack matched the records exactly. Another required adjustment. Nothing unusual. His brush made small marks. The sound was soft. Scratch. Pause. Scratch. Then stillness. Temple work relied on trust. People trusted that workers arrived. Trusted records. Trusted routines. Not because every day was perfect. Because enough people kept showing up. Someone baked. Someone carried. Someone counted. The worker reached upward for a higher shelf. His shoulders pulled slightly. He lowered the bundle slowly. The weight was ordinary. But ordinary weight becomes noticeable after many repetitions. He placed it on the table. Opened it. Inside were longer folded cloths. Ceremonial perhaps. Or prepared for later use. He counted more carefully. Long pieces tangled more easily. His movements slowed. One edge. Then another. Careful folding. Careful stacking. No mistakes. The room remained warm. Not uncomfortable. Just heavy. The kind of warmth that makes movement feel slower. The lamp added a little more heat. Outside, air gradually improved. People sitting outdoors would begin noticing the change. River air moving through narrow spaces. The first signs of night. A bird settling. Leaves moving. A quieter world arriving. Inside, the worker stayed with the cloth. One bundle remained unopened. Then another. His hands no longer moved quickly. Not from laziness. From evening. Evening changes everyone. He checked one record twice. Numbers blurred slightly. He blinked. Looked again. Correct. He made the mark. Somewhere outside, a door closed. Then another. A short conversation faded. Temple spaces slowly emptied. The storage area became one of the quieter places. He sat briefly. Not long. Just enough. The stool creaked softly. He drank water. The water was warmer than earlier. Still welcome. He rested his hands. They carried faint dryness from touching linen all day. His fingertips held tiny traces of fiber. He looked across the room. Rows of shelves. So ordinary. Yet entire days disappeared inside rooms like this. Not through great events. Only repetition. People often imagine history as movement. But much of history stayed still. A person standing in one room. Doing one task. While seasons changed outside. The worker stood again. There was still enough light. Still enough energy. He reached for the next bundle. Opened it. Counted slowly. Outside, the sky continued changing. Blue faded. Warm colors gathered over the river. Soon stars would appear. Soon the roads would quiet. Soon tired workers would rest. But inside the temple storage room, beneath the gentle flame of a small lamp, folded linen still waited patiently to be counted. The light from the oil lamp reached only part of the room. Beyond it, shelves faded into quiet shapes. Rows of folded linen rested in half shadow. The worker no longer looked across the whole room at once. Evening narrowed attention. Now there was only the next bundle. The next count. The next line of record. His body had entered the slow final rhythm of the day. Not energetic. Not exhausted. Something quieter. A steady movement that belonged to people who had worked since early morning and knew there was still enough strength left to finish carefully. He untied another cord. The fibers of the cord felt smoother than before. Years of use had softened them. The knot opened. Inside rested folded cloth arranged in stacks. He touched the top one. Cool. Dry. Simple. He counted. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pause. 5. His voice remained low enough that it almost disappeared before leaving his mouth. Numbers became part of the room. Then silence returned. He folded the cloth again. Not tightly. Not loosely. Just enough. Many ancient tasks depended on knowing exactly how much pressure to use. Too much damaged things. Too little created disorder. There were countless small skills nobody wrote about. How to carry water. How to stack jars. How to fold linen. How to walk with weight. How to sit comfortably on stone. People learned quietly from repetition. Outside the storage room, the temple grounds continued changing. The last bright light rested along upper walls. Courtyards became cooler. A servant crossed carrying empty containers. Another worker covered stored goods with cloth. Doors began closing one by one. Nothing dramatic. Only evening becoming evening. The worker continued. He moved more slowly now, not because the work became harder but because careful work naturally slows at day's end. His fingers traced edges. One fold. Another. Straighten. Count. Record. Return. His eyes adjusted between lamplight and shadow. Sometimes he blinked and waited for details to return. The room had become familiar in a different way. Morning reveals. Evening hides. Things become softer. Less exact. Storage rooms at night felt larger than during the day. The shelves seemed farther apart. Corners deeper. Silence wider. He reached for a smaller bundle. This one was wrapped differently. Perhaps returned recently. Perhaps prepared for later use. He untied it. Inside, the linen carried a faint smell of washing. Clean. Dry. Very subtle. Nothing strong. He unfolded the first piece. There was a small repaired section. Tiny stitches. Even. Patient. Someone had sat with needle and thread. Maybe in afternoon shade. Maybe near a doorway. Maybe speaking quietly with someone nearby. Repairing cloth because replacing it took effort. Ancient life depended on maintenance. Objects stayed because people cared for them. He folded it gently. Placed it back. Counted the rest. Outside, sounds became more distant. Voices lowered. The evening meal hour had begun in nearby homes. Across the village, people gathered. Simple food. Warm bread. Water. Perhaps vegetables. Perhaps fish. Perhaps dates. No rush. Meals after work carried a different feeling. Not celebration. Relief. People sat. Shoulders lowered. Hands rested. Children grew quieter. Someone stared into fading light. Someone listened to insects. Someone simply enjoyed not moving. The worker probably imagined his own evening. Not constantly, but enough. The mind naturally drifts toward rest. Still he stayed. One more shelf. Another. Work first. He adjusted the lamp. The flame stretched briefly. Then settled. Its light moved across rows of folded cloth. For a moment the room looked softer than at any time all day. Warm stone. Golden light. Pale linen. No movement. Only waiting. The worker noticed how few unchecked bundles remained. Not satisfaction exactly. Just recognition. The room had changed because of his day. Not visibly. The shelves looked almost identical. But now the records matched. The counts existed. Order returned. Tomorrow would begin from this point. He sat again. This time a little longer. He stretched one foot. Then the other. His knees appreciated the pause. Standing all day creates its own quiet tiredness. No dramatic ache. Just heaviness. Outside, evening deepened. The first stars appeared above the Nile. The river reflected fading light. Boats near shore became darker shapes. People finishing meals stepped outside briefly. The hottest air had passed. Night brought permission to breathe more easily. Temple walls slowly released heat gathered through the day. Inside the storage room, the worker remained with shelves and lamplight. He looked at the records. Checked one line. Then another. No mistakes. Good. He reached toward another bundle. Opened it. Counted. 1, 2, 3. He stopped. Counted again. Same result. He checked the record. Different. Interesting. Not alarming. Just something to fix. He stood quietly thinking. Not solving a mystery. Only remembering. Perhaps moved yesterday. Perhaps recorded late. He searched another shelf. Slowly. No hurry. Eventually he found the missing pieces. Folded nearby. Simple. Order restored. He adjusted the marks. These small moments probably felt satisfying in a quiet way. Not triumph. Just smoothness. Like setting something gently back into place. The room seemed calmer again. The lamp burned lower. Its light became deeper. The shelves cast longer shadows. The worker realized night had nearly arrived. Still there was enough time. Enough light. Enough calm. He opened another bundle. Folded cloth waited inside. Outside, the Nile moved silently through darkness. Inside, beneath the fading lamp, another count quietly began. The room felt smaller at night. Not because the walls had changed, but because darkness gently closed around the edges. Only the places touched by lamplight remained clear. Shelves nearby appeared warm and familiar. Shelves farther away became soft shapes. The worker stood quietly and adjusted the wick. The flame lifted slightly. The shadows shifted. Then everything settled again. He returned to the table. Another folded bundle waited. Its cord was tied differently from the others. A small detail. Perhaps tied by another worker. Perhaps older. Perhaps simply habit. Ancient work contained many habits. Two people could perform the same task for years and still fold cloth differently. One folded tightly. Another loosely. One stacked high. Another low. Most differences disappeared inside routine. Only quiet workers noticed them. He loosened the knot. Opened the bundle. Counted. 1, 2, 3, 4. The numbers felt softer at night. During the day they belonged to work. At night they almost sounded like thoughts. He folded each piece carefully. Pressed edges flat. Returned them. Closed the bundle. Moved to the next. Outside the storage building, the temple had become calm. Large places become surprisingly quiet after people leave. Empty courtyards hold different sounds. Wind. Distant footsteps. Wood cooling. A door moving slightly. Nothing more. Some workers still remained. Night staff. People responsible for lamps. Cleaning. Watching entrances. Preparing for morning. Ancient places never completely slept. Someone always stayed awake. Somewhere nearby a worker walked carrying a lamp of their own. A small moving light crossed briefly outside the doorway and disappeared. The linen worker barely looked. His attention remained with shelves. Work became simpler at night. There were fewer interruptions. No deliveries. No conversations. Only task and silence. He checked another record. The brush left soft marks. Tiny sounds. Scratch. Pause. Scratch. Then stillness. He placed the board down. His fingers rested briefly on the table. The wood felt warm. Everything held warmth from the day. Stone. Shelves. Air. Even after sunset, heat remained. It slowly left over hours. Outside, village life had settled. Meals finished. Cooking fires lowered. Families sat outside homes where air moved more freely. People spoke quietly. Someone repaired clothing in low light. Someone cleaned bowls. Someone stretched tired legs. Someone simply watched the night. Children became sleepy. Their movements slower. Their voices smaller. A fisherman checked tomorrow's nets. A baker prepared thoughts for morning. A farmer considered water and fields. Ordinary lives moved into rest. The worker would join them later. But not yet. He reached toward another shelf. This section held bundles stored long ago. Less movement here. Less use. Dust rested more heavily. He brushed one bundle clean. Opened it. Inside the linen looked untouched. Perfect folds. Still. Almost peaceful. He counted slowly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He paused. Not because anything was wrong. Only because night changes pacing. You stop noticing time. The room felt detached from the world outside. Like its own quiet place. Only cloth. Only records. Only lamplight. He imagined nothing dramatic. People near the end of a workday rarely do. Thoughts become practical. Food. Walking home. Water. Rest. Tomorrow. Small things. He folded the cloth. Returned it. Another bundle. Count. Fold. Record. Again. His shoulders lowered. His movements became economical. No unnecessary steps. Years of work create efficiency without hurry. He knew where to stand. How far to reach. When to turn. When to sit. His body remembered. The lamp flame moved gently. For a moment he watched it. Small flames feel different at night. They make rooms quieter. They shorten distances. They soften thoughts. He adjusted the wick again. Nearby shelves brightened. Further shelves disappeared. Good enough. The remaining work looked manageable. Outside, somewhere beyond the walls, river water moved through darkness. The Nile at night did not announce itself. No great sound. Only movement. Water carrying reflections. Water continuing. People slept beside it. Worked beside it. Lived entire lives beside it. and tonight it continued flowing while one worker counted linen. The worker sat for another short rest. His feet remained on cool stone. The air finally felt lighter. Night had begun helping. He drank water. Not cold. Still welcome. He looked across the records. Checked completed lines. Many shelves done. Good. Not excitement. Only quiet acknowledgement. Work leaves a particular feeling at the end of long days. Not happiness exactly. Not relief. More like settling. Like dust after movement. He stood again. Only a few sections remained. The room had become familiar in a new way. Every shelf had passed through his hands today. Every bundle opened. Every count checked. Nothing hidden. Nothing forgotten. He moved toward another row. Opened a bundle. Counted. This time he whispered almost silently. 1, 2, 3. The lamp flickered. Then steadied. Outside, a night bird called once. Then quiet returned. He folded the cloth. Placed it back. Adjusted the cord. Stepped away. For a brief moment he stood still. Noticing the room. The shelves looked peaceful. As though the cloth itself had become sleepy. Rows of pale folded linen resting quietly after being handled all day. He smiled only slightly. Not because the work was finished. It was not. But because everything seemed in order. Then he reached for the next bundle. And under the calm lamplight of ancient evening, the counting continued. The lamp had burned long enough that its light looked softer now. Not weaker. Only calmer. Its small flame no longer pushed strongly into the room. Instead it rested there quietly, giving enough light for shelves, records, and hands. The worker stood beside another table. He did not hurry. Night removes hurry from most things. Movements become measured. Even thoughts seem to walk more slowly. He untied another bundle. The cord came loose with little effort. Inside were narrow folded cloths stacked neatly together. He touched the first one. Dry. Smooth. Cooler than his hands. He unfolded it partially. Counted. Folded. Placed it aside. Repeated. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pause. 5. Then again. His work had become almost invisible. No unnecessary motion. No wasted steps. A person repeating the same task for years eventually becomes difficult to notice. Actions disappear into rhythm. Hands seem to know before the mind does. He finished one stack. Recorded it. Moved on. Outside the room, a faint breeze crossed the courtyard. Not enough to enter fully. Only enough to move the edge of darkness. Temple walls cooled slowly. Heat left them in silence. Stone remembered the sun for a long time. The worker noticed that the room smelled slightly different now. Less warm. More dry. The scent of linen had become clearer. Fiber. Wood. Dust. Oil. Nothing sharp. Only old quiet things resting together. He opened another shelf. This section held cloth wrapped inside cloth. Extra protection. Perhaps prepared for future ceremonies. Perhaps simply stored carefully. He untied the outer layer. Then the inner. Everything took time. Ancient work often required patience more than strength. Many tasks rewarded calm hands. He counted again. 1, 2, 3, then paused. One fold was uneven. Not incorrect. Just folded differently. He opened it, refolded, returned it. No one would know. No one would praise it. Tomorrow someone else might open it. Or months later. Still, he left it orderly. People often care for places they know they will return to. He checked the records. The brush moved. Tiny lines appeared. A small correction. Finished. The room remained quiet. No voices now. Most workers had gone. Occasionally somewhere far away came a soft sound. A closing gate. A footstep. A low conversation. Then silence again. The worker reached up and stretched carefully. His shoulders loosened. His neck turned slowly. Long days settle into the body. Not all at once. Little by little. His feet had crossed this room hundreds of times today. Small distances become large through repetition. He sat for a moment. This rest was different. Not midday rest. Not heat rest. Night rest. The kind that arrives near the end of work. His hands rested in his lap. They looked ordinary. Dry. Slight traces of linen dust. Nothing special. Yet all day those hands had moved through records and shelves. Quiet work leaves quiet evidence. Outside the temple, the village had become still. Some homes remained awake. Small lamps. Low conversations. Someone washing. Someone finishing repairs. But many people had already settled for sleep. Ancient nights were darker than modern nights. Once lamps lowered and fires dimmed, darkness became complete. People rested because night invited rest. Tomorrow arrived early. The worker looked toward the doorway. Beyond it, the courtyard looked almost silver beneath the night sky. The air outside seemed cooler. Soon. Not yet. He stood again. Returned to the shelves. Another bundle. Untie. Open. Count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The numbers felt slower now. Not because he forgot. Because there was nowhere else to be in this moment. Only here. Only this cloth. Only this count. He folded each piece carefully. His fingers pressed corners. Straightened edges. Returned the bundle. Some work cannot be rushed without becoming worse. This was one of those kinds. He noticed that fewer unchecked bundles remained. Entire rows had already passed through his hands. The room looked nearly unchanged. Yet the day had moved through it. Morning. Heat. Afternoon. Evening. Now night. All inside one room. History often moved this way. Quietly. Without announcements. A worker arrived. Worked. Left. Returned. Days gathered. Years passed. No carved walls remembered these hours. But real life was built from them. He opened another shelf. Inside rested cloth that felt heavier. He counted carefully. 1, 2, 3. Then recounted. Correct. Good. He made the mark. Set the brush down. The lamp shifted slightly as air moved. Its shadow crossed the shelves. Rows of folded linen became hills of pale shapes. For a moment the room looked almost peaceful enough to sleep in. Not comfortable. But calm. Like a place untouched by hurry. The worker smiled faintly at the thought. then continued. Outside, the river kept moving. Inside, the record slowly filled. The night deepened. The lamp stayed steady. And one more bundle waited patiently to be counted. The worker stood quietly beside the shelves and listened. Not for anything important. Only the ordinary sounds of night. A faint movement of air. The small sound of lamp oil feeding the flame. Wood settling. Very far away, perhaps a soft footstep crossing stone. Nothing more. Night made every sound feel larger. During the day, noise gathered and blended together. At night, each small thing became clear. He looked at the remaining shelves. Not many now. Enough. The work would continue at the same pace. No reason to rush. There would still be tomorrow. There was almost always tomorrow. He untied another bundle. This cord had become stiff. Older. Less frequently opened. His fingers worked patiently. Eventually it loosened. Inside, the linen rested exactly where someone had placed it long ago. The folds held their shape. Edges remained neat. The cloth seemed almost asleep. He lifted the first piece. Slowly unfolded it. Counted. 1. Fold. 2. Fold. 3. Return. His movements had become quieter than earlier. His hands no longer lifted cloth high. Everything stayed close to the table. Closer to the lamp. Closer to rest. The room itself seemed to understand evening. Storage rooms do not demand attention. They simply wait. All day these shelves had waited. All day the linen had remained patient. And one worker had moved among them like a calm current through still water. He finished the stack. Recorded the count. Then paused. Not because he was tired. Because after completing one section, there is sometimes a moment where the body naturally becomes still. The pause between tasks. The small empty space. He breathed quietly. The room smelled warm and dry. He looked at the records. Many marks now. A full day pressed into careful lines. No grand achievement. Only completion. Outside, village life had softened further. People who remained awake sat low beside doorways. Someone spoke quietly. Someone listened. Someone watched stars. Children slept. Cooking fires became dim. The night belonged to slower things. Near the river, air moved differently. Cooler. Boats tied near shore drifted gently. Water touched wood. Reeds moved. Fishermen sleeping nearby might wake briefly and then settle again. Nothing asked to be remembered. Everything simply existed. Inside the temple, the worker continued. Another bundle. Untie. Open. Count. His voice was barely more than breath now. 1. 2. 3. The lamp cast moving shadows over his hands. His fingers looked older in this light. More worn. Even if he was not old. Work changes hands. Work leaves small traces. Not dramatic. Only dryness. Strength. Habit. His fingertips moved over cloth automatically. Each etch. Each fold. Each return. He remembered without thinking where completed stacks belonged. The room had become a map inside him. This shelf. That row. Records there. Unused bundles farther back. People who spend enough time somewhere eventually carry it quietly in memory. He placed another stack back. Stepped away. Check the line. Correct. Good. There is a particular calm in finishing small tasks correctly. No celebration. Only smoothness. The feeling of nothing needing correction. He sat once more. Longer this time. The stool felt firmer than before. His body settled into it. His knees rested. His shoulders lowered. He looked at the lamp. Flames have a way of changing thoughts. They move slowly. Never completely still. Never hurried. People sitting beside lamps often become quiet. Even after long days. He drank water. Only a little remained. Enough. Tomorrow morning fresh water would arrive. Tomorrow fresh work. Tomorrow another beginning. But not yet. The night still held time. He stood again. Returned to the shelves. One bundle remained in this row. He opened it. The linen inside was lighter. Softer. More frequently used. He counted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then recounted. Correct. He folded each piece. Pressed the edges. Tied the cord. Placed it back. Finished. He looked at the shelf. Done. Nothing looked different. And yet the shelf had passed through his hands tonight. He moved toward another section. This part of the room had stayed untouched all evening. Dark. Cool. The lamp followed him. Light shifted. Shadows moved. The room seemed to wake and sleep in pieces. He opened another bundle. Counted again. The work continued exactly as before. Because ordinary life rarely changes pace. No music. No announcements. Only another cloth. Another number. Another careful fold. Outside, stars crossed slowly above the Nile. Inside, the lamp became smaller. The room became quieter. And among rows of pale folded linen, the worker reached gently for the next bundle. The worker stood quietly beside the shelves and listened. Not for anything important. Only the ordinary sounds of night. A faint movement of air. The small sound of lamp oil feeding the flame. Wood settling. Very far away, perhaps a soft footstep crossing stone. Nothing more. Night made every sound feel larger. During the day, noise gathered and blended together. At night, each small thing became clear. He looked at the remaining shelves. Not many now. Enough. The work would continue at the same pace. No reason to rush. There would still be tomorrow. There was almost always tomorrow. He untied another bundle. This cord had become stiff. Older. Less frequently opened. His fingers worked patiently. Eventually it loosened. Inside, the linen rested exactly where someone had placed it long ago. The folds held their shape. Edges remained neat. The cloth seemed almost asleep. He lifted the first piece. Slowly unfolded it. Counted. 1. Fold. 2. Fold. 3. Return. His movements had become quieter than earlier. His hands no longer lifted cloth high. Everything stayed close to the table. Closer to the lamp. Closer to rest. The room itself seemed to understand evening. Storage rooms do not demand attention. They simply wait. All day these shelves had waited. All day the linen had remained patient. And one worker had moved among them like a calm current through still water. He finished the stack. Recorded the count. Then paused. Not because he was tired. Because after completing one section, there is sometimes a moment where the body naturally becomes still. The pause between tasks. The small empty space. He breathed quietly. The room smelled warm and dry. He looked at the records. Many marks now. A full day pressed into careful lines. No grand achievement. Only completion. Outside, village life had softened further. People who remained awake sat low beside doorways. Someone spoke quietly. Someone listened. Someone watched stars. Children slept. Cooking fires became dim. The night belonged to slower things. Near the river, air moved differently. Cooler. Boats tied near shore drifted gently. Water touched wood. Reeds moved. Fishermen sleeping nearby might wake briefly and then settle again. Nothing asked to be remembered. Everything simply existed. Inside the temple, the worker continued. Another bundle. Untie. Open. Count. His voice was barely more than breath now. 1, 2, 3. The lamp cast moving shadows over his hands. His fingers looked older in this light. More worn. Even if he was not old. Work changes hands. Work leaves small traces. Not dramatic. Only dryness. Strength. Habit. His fingertips moved over cloth automatically. Each etch. Each fold. Each return. He remembered without thinking where completed stacks belonged. The room had become a map inside him. This shelf. That row. Records there. Unused bundles farther back. People who spend enough time somewhere eventually carry it quietly in memory. He placed another stack back. Stepped away. Checked the line. Correct. Good. There is a particular calm in finishing small tasks correctly. No celebration. Only smoothness. The feeling of nothing needing correction. He sat once more. Longer this time. The stool felt firmer than before. His body settled into it. His knees rested. His shoulders lowered. He looked at the lamp. Flames have a way of changing thoughts. They move slowly. Never completely still. Never hurried. People sitting beside lamps often become quiet. Even after long days. He drank water. Only a little remained. Enough. Tomorrow morning fresh water would arrive. Tomorrow fresh work. Tomorrow another beginning. But not yet. The night still held time. He stood again. Returned to the shelves. One bundle remained in this row. He opened it. The linen inside was lighter. Softer. More frequently used. He counted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then recounted. Correct. He folded each piece. Pressed the edges. Tied the cord. Placed it back. Finished. He looked at the shelf. Done. Nothing looked different. And yet the shelf had passed through his hands tonight. He moved toward another section. This part of the room had stayed untouched all evening. Dark. Cool. The lamp followed him. Light shifted. Shadows moved. The room seemed to wake and sleep in pieces. He opened another bundle. Counted again. The work continued exactly as before. Because ordinary life rarely changes pace. No music. No announcements. Only another cloth. Another number. Another careful fold. Outside, stars cross slowly above the Nile. Inside, the lamp became smaller. The room became quieter. And among rows of pale folded linen, the worker reached gently for the next bundle. The room seemed slower now. Not because time itself had changed. Only because night removes edges from everything. Objects soften. Thoughts soften. Even work becomes quieter. The worker carried the lamp carefully toward the next shelf. Its light moved across rows of folded linen. For a moment the shelves appeared alive, not moving, not changing, only appearing one after another from darkness and then returning to it. He placed the lamp down. Adjusted it slightly. Enough light. No more. Oil mattered. Everything stored in temples had value. Not because it was rare. Because effort lived inside every object. Oil meant gathering. Transport. Storage. Records. Nothing appeared by itself. The worker untied another bundle. His fingers moved slowly. Not tired exactly. Only deep into the rhythm of the day. After enough hours, movement becomes gentle. No sharp motions remain. He opened the cloth. Inside rested folded pieces in careful stacks. He counted. 1, 2, 3. Pause. 4, 5. His voice had become nearly silent. The numbers felt private now. Like thoughts passing through the room. He folded each cloth. Pressed corners. Returned them. Finished. Then wrote the count. The brush left soft marks. Scratch. Pause. Scratch. He placed it down. Silence returned. He stood still for a moment. The room felt complete in parts. Sections finished. Sections waiting. Nothing demanding. Storage work never called loudly. It simply remained until someone came. Outside, the temple grounds had become almost still. Most doors were closed. The broad courtyard sat beneath open sky. Columns cast long dark shapes. A night worker somewhere crossed carrying a small lamp. Then disappeared. Ancient places often remained awake in tiny hidden ways. Not many people. Just enough. Someone watching. Someone cleaning. Someone preparing. The worker remained inside with the linen. He reached toward another shelf. This bundle felt heavier. He lowered it carefully. Opened it. The folds inside were larger. Long cloth. His hands spread the first piece across the table. The lamp revealed tiny irregular lines in the weave. No cloth was completely perfect. That was normal. Tiny differences lived everywhere. Hands made things. Hands are never identical. He counted. Folded. Counted again. His eyes moved more slowly. He checked each stack carefully. At night mistakes become easier. He knew this. So he became gentler. More patient. No reason to hurry now. Outside, homes near the river had become quiet. People slept on woven mats. Some indoors. Somewhere air moved better. The day stayed in their bodies. Field work. Walking. Lifting. Grinding grain. Fishing. Carrying water. Long days leave heaviness. Sleep arrived naturally. Children curled near family. Someone woke briefly and drank water. Someone adjusted cloth and slept again. The river continued moving nearby. Always moving. Always quiet. The worker thought briefly of home. Not deeply. Just small thoughts. A doorway. A meal already finished. Cooler air. A place to sit. Tomorrow morning. Then the thought passed. Work remained. He continued. One stack finished. Then another. The room became tidier. Completed bundles returned to place. Checked shelves slowly gathered order. Not visible to anyone else, but visible to him. That was enough. He sat again. Only for a short while. The stool felt familiar now. His body settled immediately. Hands resting. Back straightening. He looked around. Rows of pale cloth. Lamplight. Warm stone. Quiet. There are places in history where nothing dramatic happened. Rooms where entire lives passed through ordinary tasks. Places without stories carved into walls. Yet they held real days. This room was one of them. The worker stood. Adjusted the lamp. The flame had lowered slightly. Enough remained. He reached for another bundle. This one opened easily. Inside the linen felt lighter. Maybe newer. Maybe simply washed more recently. He counted. 1, 2, 3, 4. Correct. He folded carefully. One edge needed straightening. He fixed it. Returned the stack. His movements had become almost invisible now. Like someone preparing for sleep while still awake. Outside, a faint breeze finally entered through a narrow opening. The flame moved. The room shifted softly. The air felt cooler. The worker noticed. Everyone notices when heat leaves. Shoulders relax. Breathing becomes easier. He stayed there a moment. Not moving. Only feeling cooler air. Then back to work. The records waited. Another line. Another mark. The brush moved. Done. He looked toward the remaining shelves. Still enough. No frustration. No urgency. The day had already become night. The night would eventually become morning. Work existed in between. He lifted another bundle. Opened it. Counted slowly. Outside, stars reflected faintly on dark river water. Inside, beneath a patient lamp and among shelves of folded linen, another quiet count began. The room had become familiar in a new way. During the day, the worker knew it through movement. Now he knew it through stillness. He no longer needed to look carefully to know where each shelf stood. His body remembered. 3 steps. Turn. Table. Records. Lamp. Another row. The room existed quietly inside him after so many hours. He placed his hand against the shelf for balance and reached toward another bundle. The cloth wrapping felt dry and cool. He untied the cord. Slowly. The knot opened. Inside rested folded linen. Simple. Pale. Patient. He lifted the first piece. The cloth unfolded with almost no sound. Count. Fold. Return. Count. Fold. Return. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pause. 5. His voice had become softer than the lamp. The numbers stayed close. The room accepted them and became quiet again. He tied the bundle and returned it to the shelf. The shelf looked unchanged. But now it belonged to completed work. One more section settled into order. Outside the room, Night stretched across the temple grounds. Open spaces looked larger in darkness. Courtyards held moonlight. Stone reflected faint silver tones. Palm shadows rested across the ground. The places that had been busy all day now looked calm and empty. Only small signs remained. A covered jar. A broom leaning against a wall. Closed doors. Quiet evidence that people had been there. The worker reached for another shelf. This section held mixed sizes. Smaller cloth. Longer cloth. Different uses. Different histories. He opened the first stack. Counted. Correct. Opened another. Different. He counted again. Still different. No concern. Only adjustment. He looked at the record. Brush. Scratch. Correction. Finished. Order restored. Ancient work often looked like this. Not creating. Maintaining. Keeping things aligned. Preventing tomorrow from becoming harder. Invisible work. Important work. The lamp shifted slightly. Its flame bent and then steadied. The worker looked at it. Oil remained. Enough. He returned to the shelves. Outside, homes near the river had become quiet. Someone sleeping shifted under linen. Someone nearby woke briefly and listened to the night. Perhaps heard insects. Perhaps distant water. Then returned to sleep. A fisherman resting before dawn. A baker waiting for early morning. A servant sleeping lightly. Ordinary lives preparing to begin again. The worker remained awake. His work belonged to this hour. He opened another bundle. Inside the linen carried a faint memory of sunlight. Not real sunlight. Only the feeling of cloth dried and folded long ago. Warm places stay inside objects. He counted carefully. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Correct. Fold. Press. Return. He noticed his hands. Slower. Steadier. Not tired in a dramatic way. Only deep into the day. There is a point late in work when energy becomes very smooth. Nothing extra remains. Only necessary movement. He sat again. Long enough to rest his feet. Not long enough to sleep. The stool felt familiar. The room felt familiar. The silence felt familiar. He looked across completed shelves. Many now. The records beside him held a full day. Morning marks. Midday marks. Evening marks. Night marks. Hours pressed into rows of careful lines. Nobody would keep these forever. But for now they mattered. Tomorrow depended on them. He drank the last of his water. The cup stayed empty. He set it aside. His thoughts drifted briefly. Not dreaming. Only quiet thoughts. The walk home. Cooler air. Removing sandals. Sitting. Closing his eyes. Nothing complicated. Simple thoughts belong to tired evenings. Then he stood. Work remained. He carried the lamp farther. The room changed around him. Shadows moved. Shelves appeared. Darkness folded away from the light. He opened another bundle. This cloth had been folded very tightly. Perhaps by someone newer. Perhaps someone careful. He loosened it. Counted. Folded more gently before returning it. A small kindness to tomorrow. He smiled faintly. Then continued. Outside, the Nile kept moving beneath the stars. Water past reeds. Water past sleeping boats. Water past fields waiting for another day. Nothing hurried. Nothing announced itself. Inside, the worker checked another record. Brush. Scratch. Pause. Done. The lamp had become lower. Its circle of light smaller. Still enough. Always enough. He moved toward another shelf. Opened another bundle. Counted again. The room remained calm. The cloth remained patient. And deep in the quiet hours of ancient Egypt, while most of the world rested beside the river, one worker continued counting temple linen by the steady glow of a fading lamp. The lamp stood lower than before. Its flame remained steady, but the circle of light had become smaller. Nearby shelves stayed visible. Farther rows softened into darkness. The worker did not seem concerned. People who work by lamps learn how much light is enough. Too bright wastes oil. Too dim slows hands. This was enough. He moved the lamp closer to the next shelf. The table waited. Another bundle waited. Everything in the room seemed patient. He untied the cord. The fibers resisted slightly. Old knots become familiar with time. His fingers loosened them carefully. Inside were folded cloths arranged in layers. Not stacked high. Not low. Orderly. He lifted one. The linen opened quietly. No sound except a small movement of fabric. Count. Fold. Return. 1. 2. 3. Pause. 4. 5. Then the next. His hands knew exactly how much space each fold required. Too much unfolding creates extra work. Too little creates mistakes. The balance had become automatic. Outside the room, night covered the temple. Courtyards rested. Columns stood quietly. Open spaces collected moonlight. Large places become gentle after midnight. Without crowds and movement, even stone seems to relax. Somewhere far away another lamp moved briefly. Then disappeared. Someone else finishing another ordinary task. Perhaps cleaning. Perhaps checking doors. Perhaps preparing something for morning. Work existed even in quiet hours. The worker finished the stack. Recorded the count. Placed the brush down. His movements had become economical. Nothing unnecessary. Turn. Reach. Count. Write. Return. Years create this kind of motion. Not faster. Smoother. He reached for another bundle. This one felt lighter. Frequently used perhaps. Its folds opened more easily. Inside, one cloth had been folded slightly unevenly. He noticed immediately. Not because it mattered much. Only because he had touched so many today. He unfolded it. Straightened it. Refolded. Placed it back. No one would know. The room would simply feel orderly tomorrow. Outside, homes beside the Nile remained mostly asleep. The river moved quietly in darkness. Water touched shore. A tide boat shifted slightly. Palm leaves moved once and became still. Some people slept deeply. Others lightly. Ancient life often began early. Bodies learned sleep naturally. Workers rested because another day waited. The linen worker stayed awake. Only for a little longer. Though he did not think of time that way. People without clocks often notice different things. The angle of light. The feeling of air. The weight behind the eyes. The quiet of the world. He sat again. This rest felt deeper. Not sleep. Only stillness. He rested his hands on his knees. Looked at the room. Rows of pale folded cloth. So ordinary. And somehow peaceful. All day he had moved among them. Touching. Counting. Checking. Returning. The room looked nearly the same as morning. But he knew it differently now. Every shelf had become familiar. Every row had passed through his hands. That quiet knowledge felt complete. He stood. The stool remained behind. The lamp came with him. Another shelf. Another bundle. He opened it. Counted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Correct. He folded slowly. The cloth caught lamplight along its edges. Pale gold. Soft. For a moment the linen looked warmer than stone. Then it became ordinary cloth again. He tied the cord. Returned the bundle. Finished. The remaining shelves looked fewer now. Not empty. Only calmer. The room no longer felt full of tasks. Just a few things left waiting. Outside, the air had become cooler. Night eventually rewards patience. Heat leaves. Stone breathes. The river sends softer air inland. If he stepped outside now, he would feel it. Perhaps soon. But not yet. He checked another line in the records. Correct. Another. Correct. A small adjustment. Finished. The brush rested. He noticed faint traces of linen dust on his hands. Dry pale marks. Evidence of the day. Nothing dramatic. Only proof that work had happened. He rubbed his fingertips together lightly. Then returned to the shelves. The lamp flickered once. Recovered. Still enough. He opened another bundle. Inside rested cloth folded long ago by hands he would never know. Someone had prepared this. Someone had carried it. Someone had stored it. Now he counted it. Tomorrow someone else might unfold it again. Objects move quietly through many lives. He counted slowly. Folded carefully. Returned it. Outside, stars remained above the Nile. Inside, the lamp continued its small steady glow. And in the deep calm of ancient night, among shelves of folded linen and rows of careful records, the worker reached gently for the next bundle. The room felt quieter than it had at any other hour. Not because silence had arrived. Silence had been here all along. But now there were fewer things inside it. Fewer footsteps. Fewer voices. Fewer tasks waiting elsewhere. The worker stood beside the shelves and looked for a moment at the remaining bundles. Only a few rows still untouched. The room seemed different now. Not smaller. Not emptier. Only calmer. Like a place that had settled after a long day. He lifted the lamp and carried it farther into the room. Light moved slowly across shelves. Pale folded cloth appeared and disappeared. Bundles rested quietly where they had been placed days, months, perhaps years ago. Storage rooms collect time in quiet ways. Nothing dramatic changes. Objects simply wait. He placed the lamp down. Reached for another bundle. The cord loosened easily. Inside were neatly folded lengths of linen. He unfolded the first piece. Counted. Folded. Returned. 1, 2, 3. Pause. 4, His voice remained low. The numbers seemed softer now. Almost part of breathing. The worker no longer thought separately about each motion. His hands understood. Open. Check. Count. Fold. Tie. Record. Years of ordinary work become invisible. People stop noticing how much they know. He finished the stack. Recorded the number. Moved to the next. Outside, somewhere beyond the temple walls, a dog barked once. Then silence again. Night sounds never stayed long. The worker barely noticed. His attention stayed close. Near the lamp. Near the linen. Near the records. This hour belonged to small details. He opened another bundle. One cloth had loosened slightly from its fold. Nothing serious. He unfolded it completely. Smoothed it gently. Pressed the corners. Folded it again. Slow. Even. There. Good. He returned it. Ancient life included endless small acts of correction. Straightening. Repairing. Sweeping. Checking. Refolding. People kept the world working one ordinary movement at a time. He sat again. This time he leaned forward slightly. His elbows rested on his knees. His feet remained still. He did not close his eyes. Only rested. The room looked peaceful. The lamp made every edge softer. Stone became warm. Cloth became pale gold. Shadows became gentle. He listened. The lamp. The air. Nothing else. Then he stood again. Night work often moves this way. Work. Pause. Work. Stillness. Work. No rush. He reached for another shelf. This bundle felt different. The wrapping cloth had become softer through use. He opened it. Inside the linen had small signs of age. Not damage. Only years. Tiny changes. Edges worn smooth. Threads softened. He counted carefully. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Correct. He folded each piece. He wondered briefly how many times this cloth had already been unfolded and returned. No answer. Only repetition. Objects in ordinary life travel quietly. Hands change. Years change. The cloth remains. Outside, the Nile moved beneath stars. People sleeping nearby would not hear it. But it remained. Moving. Always moving. Tomorrow morning people would return to the river. Water jars. Fishing. Washing. Boats. Fields. Routine would begin again. The worker would probably return too. Maybe not to this room tomorrow. Maybe somewhere else. Temple work shifts. But tonight belonged to linen. He checked another record. His brush moved more slowly now. The marks remained careful. Records created at night looked no different from records made in daylight. Only the hands changed. He looked toward the doorway. Outside the courtyard looked cooler. The stone seemed pale. The air beyond the room felt softer. Soon. Not yet. He picked up another bundle. Opened it. Counted. The motions felt smaller. More compact. As though the entire day had folded inward. Morning had felt wide. Now everything existed inside the lamplight. Inside his hands. Inside the next count. 1, 2, 3, Fold. Return. He tied the cord. Placed it back. Finished. The shelf looked peaceful. He moved to another. Only a few remained now. No excitement. Only awareness. The room seemed to breathe more slowly. The lamp burned lower. Enough. Always enough. He adjusted it carefully. The flame steadied. Light returned. He stood quietly for a moment, looking across rows of folded linen. The shelves looked almost unchanged from morning. Yet a full day had passed here. Sunrise. Heat. Dust. Afternoon. Evening. Night. All inside one room. All among folded cloth. Then he reached gently for the next bundle. And under the quiet glow of the lamp, while the ancient world rested beside the dark river, the counting continued. The worker lifted the lamp again. Not high. Only enough to bring light toward another row. The room responded quietly. Nearby shelves brightened. Far shelves disappeared. Light and shadow traded places without sound. He placed the lamp down and rested one hand lightly on the table. The wood felt different now. Cooler than before. The change had arrived slowly enough that he had not noticed. Night does that. It changes things without announcing them. He reached for another bundle. The cloth around it was tied with a careful knot. Not difficult. Just deliberate. He untied it. Opened the wrapping. Inside rested folded linen arranged in even layers. No disorder. No surprises. Only cloth waiting exactly where someone had left it. He lifted the first piece. Counted. Folded. Returned. 1. 2. 3. Pause. 4. 5. His voice felt smaller now. Not tired. Only quiet. The kind of quiet that comes after many hours. He placed the stack back. Checked the records. Correct. Another line completed. His brush made small careful marks. Then rested. The room stayed still. Outside, night settled more deeply over the temple. The open courtyards looked larger in darkness. Columns stood motionless. Doorways remained closed. Places that carried movement all day now carried memory instead. Somewhere nearby, someone walked slowly. A night worker. Sandals touched stone. Then faded. The worker listened briefly. Then returned to the shelves. He had become part of the room's rhythm. Step. Pause. Count. Right. Step again. The work no longer felt long. Long work eventually becomes normal. You stop measuring hours. You notice smaller things. The shape of folds. The feel of cloth. The steadiness of the lamp. The changing air. He opened another bundle. Inside, one cloth had a repaired corner. Tiny stitches. Almost invisible. He touched the repaired section. Who had repaired this? Someone sitting in evening light? Someone talking quietly while working? Someone already forgotten before this worker was even born? No answer. Only the repair remained. He folded it carefully. Placed it back. Small care meeting small care across years. Outside, the village rested. People slept beside open doorways. Some turned in dreams. Some woke briefly and listened. Then returned to sleep. Children slept deeply. Workers slept heavily. Tomorrow would arrive early. Fields. Water. bread. Tasks. Days moved steadily. Inside the temple, one room remained awake. The worker sat again. Not because he needed to. Only because sitting had become part of the rhythm. Work. Pause. Continue. He rested his hands together. The linen dust on his fingertips had become less visible in the lamplight. His shoulders felt heavy in a quiet way. Not painful. Only finished. He looked around. The room seemed peaceful now. Almost complete. Many shelves had already passed through his hands. The remaining ones waited patiently. No pressure. No urgency. Storage rooms never demand. They simply remain. He stood. Picked up the lamp. Moved again. The shadows moved with him. For a moment the room seemed larger. Then familiar again. Another bundle. Untie. Open. Count. 1, 2, 3, 4. Correct. Fold. Return. He noticed how carefully he still moved. Even now. Even late. Because tomorrow matters. People working with ordinary things often think quietly about tomorrow. Leave it neat. Leave it correct. Make the next day easier. No speeches. No recognition. Just care. He tied the cord neatly. Returned the bundle. Finished. Outside, a breeze moved through somewhere unseen. The lamp flickered gently. Recovered. The worker adjusted it. Its flame became steadier. Good. Enough. He checked another record. One line remained unfinished. He completed it. The page looked full. Rows of marks. Hours of attention. No one outside this room would think much about them. But they mattered. History rests on ordinary records. Someone counted. Someone remembered. Someone checked. He looked toward the shelves again. Still more. Always more. Not endless. Only waiting. He opened another bundle. Counted slowly. His hands moved automatically now. The cloth opened and folded almost without thought. Outside, the stars continued crossing the sky above the dark river. Inside, beneath a quiet lamp and among shelves of pale folded linen, the worker continued his calm, careful counting into the deep hours of ancient night. The room had become familiar in layers. Morning familiarity had belonged to tasks. Now, deep into the night, familiarity belonged to presence. The worker no longer thought about where to step. His feet already knew. His hands already knew. The shelves seemed arranged inside memory. Table. Lamp. Records. Bundle. Return. Again. He placed the lamp nearer the center of the room. The flame remained small. Enough to see folds. Enough to read marks. No more. Light spread softly over rows of linen. The cloth reflected it quietly. Pale and warm. The worker reached for another bundle. This one felt slightly heavier. Not difficult. Only full. He lowered it carefully. Untied the cord. Opened the wrapping. Inside, the folded linen rested in close layers. Carefully placed. Compressed gently by time. He lifted the first piece. Counted. Folded. Returned. 1, 2, 3. Pause. 4, 5, 6. His voice felt more like breathing now. The numbers disappeared into the room. Nothing echoed. The room simply accepted them. He finished the stack. Checked the records. Correct. The brush moved. A few lines. Finished. His hand remained resting beside the board for a moment. Not thinking. Only still. After many hours of repetition, stillness becomes noticeable. It feels complete. Outside, the night deepened. The sky above the Nile carried more stars now. Moonlight touched open places. Palm shadows rested across the ground. The roads remained empty. No carts. No deliveries. Only sleeping houses and cooling earth. Inside homes, people rested. Someone slept beside an open doorway. Someone pulled cloth closer. Someone turned once and settled again. Children slept heavily. Workers slept deeply. The day had left their bodies. Tomorrow would collect them again. The worker remained with the linen. His work belonged to the quiet hours. He opened another bundle. One fold had slipped slightly. He unfolded the stack completely. Straightened each piece. Stacked them again. No hurry. Care creates its own pace. He tied the bundle. Placed it back. The shelf looked unchanged. Only he knew. Sometimes work leaves no visible trace. That does not mean nothing happened. He moved farther. The lamp followed. Light crossed stone. Shadows shifted. The room became new again for a moment. Then familiar. He opened another shelf. This section held fewer bundles. The shelves looked calmer. He noticed. Not satisfaction. Only awareness. The room was becoming complete. He counted again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Correct. Fold. Return. His shoulders lowered. Night had softened him. Not weaker. Only quieter. He sat once more. Long enough to rest. His hands stayed open. His breathing slowed. He looked toward the doorway. Outside looked cooler. He imagined stepping outside later. Feeling the air. Walking slowly. Hearing only sandals on stone. Simple thoughts. Tired thoughts. Nearby the lamp made tiny sounds. Oil feeding flame. Almost impossible to hear. But in a room this quiet, even that became part of the atmosphere. He listened for a moment. Then stood. Returned to work. Another bundle. Open. Count. 1, 2, 3. Pause. 4. Inside the stack one cloth carried small signs of long use. Edges softened. Thread smoother. Many hands had touched this. Many days. Many returns. He folded it gently. Objects survive because ordinary people keep caring for them. The thought passed quietly. He tied the bundle. Returned it. The records waited. He added another line. The page looked crowded now. Morning marks beside night marks. Different hours. Same careful attention. Outside, the river continued. Water does not hurry. Water does not stop. People wake. Work. Sleep. The river remains. The worker looked at the remaining shelves. Still enough. The lamp had become lower. Its circle of light smaller. But somehow the room felt softer because of it. The edges disappeared. Only necessary things remained. Hands. Cloth. Records. Light. He opened another bundle. Counted again. 1, 2, 3. Fold. Return. The motion seemed almost invisible now. Like someone preparing a room for tomorrow. Outside, stars remained above the sleeping world. Inside, among rows of pale folded linen and under the quiet patience of a fading lamp, the counting continued into the calm ancient night. The room seemed to hold less time now. Not because time had disappeared. Only because there were fewer things left to notice. The heat had faded. The noise had faded. Even tiredness had become softer. Only the work remained. The worker stood beside the table and looked at the shelves. Rows that had once felt endless now seemed quieter. Many bundles had already passed through his hands. Many counts had become marks on the board. The room looked almost exactly the same. Yet the day had moved through it. He adjusted the lamp. The flame narrowed and steadied. Light gathered closer. The shelves nearest the table appeared clearly. The rest dissolved into darkness. Enough. Always enough. He reached for another bundle. Its wrapping cloth felt smoother than others. Frequently opened perhaps. Frequently folded. Frequently returned. He untied the cord. Opened it. Inside the linen rested in even stacks. The folds looked careful. Someone else had ended another day by putting these away. Now he continued the pattern. He lifted the first piece. Counted. Folded. Returned. 1, 2, 3. Pause. 4, 5. His voice no longer sounded separate from the room. Numbers came and disappeared. Silence returned immediately. He folded the last piece. Placed it back. Recorded the count. Finished. His fingers rested briefly beside the board. The brush had become familiar too. Hours of holding it. Hours of small marks. Nothing dramatic. Only steady records. Outside, the temple remained asleep. Stone held moonlight. Open spaces stayed still. Somewhere distant, a guard or worker crossed a passage slowly. The sound arrived faintly. Then disappeared. Night inside large places feels endless. Yet morning always comes. The worker did not think about morning directly. Only indirectly. Leave shelves orderly. Leave records complete. Tomorrow begins more easily. Simple thoughts. Ancient work often followed simple thoughts. He moved toward another section. The lamp followed. Light stretched over the floor. The shadows of shelves moved slowly. The room seemed alive in quiet ways. Not moving. Only changing shape. He opened another bundle. Inside the linen felt softer. Many washings. Many uses. The edges had become smooth. Not worn out. Only familiar. He unfolded one piece. Held it briefly. The cloth reflected warm lamplight. For a moment it seemed brighter than it really was. Then it became ordinary again. He counted. 1, 2, 3, 4. Correct. Fold. Return. He tied the bundle carefully. There. Good. He stepped back. The shelf looked calm. Nothing more needed. He sat. This rest arrived naturally. No decision. His body simply stopped. Hands rested. Feet became still. His shoulders lowered. He looked across the room. There was something peaceful about seeing completed shelves. Not pride. Only quiet order. Things where they belonged. He stayed seated. The lamp moved slightly. The flame remained steady. Outside, the air cooled further. People sleeping outdoors pulled cloth closer. River air moved through narrow paths. Palm leaves shifted. The world became softer. The worker stood again. Only a few shelves remained in this section. He continued. Another bundle. Untie. Open. Count. 1, 2, 3. Pause. Inside the stack one cloth had been folded with unusual care. Perfect edges. Balanced corners. Very neat. He noticed. Not because perfection mattered. Only because attention leaves traces. Someone long ago had taken an extra moment. He folded it the same way. Returned it. Quiet care continuing quietly. He recorded the number. Finished. The marks on the board looked dense now. Hours gathered into lines. Nobody outside this room would see effort inside those marks. But effort was there. History often hides inside ordinary records. He looked at his hands. Dry. Calm. Small traces of linen dust. Nothing more. He rubbed his fingertips together. Then reached again. Another bundle. Another count. Outside, stars slowly crossed above the Nile. Water moved. Boats rested. Fields waited. Homes slept. Inside, among pale folded linen and beneath the warm quiet glow of a patient lamp, one worker continued counting carefully through the calm hours of ancient night. The room no longer felt like a place inside a temple. Not entirely. After enough quiet hours, after enough folded cloth and careful counting, the room had become its own small world. Shelves. Lamp. Table. Records. Hands. Everything outside seemed farther away now. Not forgotten. Only softened. The worker stood beside another row and looked at the remaining bundles. There were fewer than before. Not empty shelves. Just shelves that had become known. He had touched most of what rested here. Opened it. Counted it. Folded it. Returned it. The room had slowly passed through his hands. He lifted the lamp. Its flame remained steady. Smaller than earlier. Warmer somehow. The light no longer reached very far. Only enough. Enough to see folds. Enough to see records. Enough for one more section. He placed it down. Reached forward. Untied another cord. The knot loosened easily. Inside rested folded linen in even stacks. The cloth looked pale in the lamplight. Almost soft enough to disappear into it. He unfolded the first piece. Counted. Folded. Returned. 1, 2, 3. Pause. 4. His voice remained quiet. Numbers no longer felt separate from breathing. Each count arrived and disappeared. The room accepted it. Then became still again. He continued. The second cloth. Then the third. His fingers moved without hesitation. Years of repetition had become something gentle. He no longer needed to remember the order. The order lived inside him. Open. Check. Count. Straighten. Fold. Return. Record. Again. Outside, the temple grounds remained calm. Moonlight rested across open stone. The broad courtyards looked pale. Columns stood like still shadows. Nothing moved except air. And even air moved slowly. Somewhere far away came the soft sound of someone closing a wooden panel. Then silence returned. The worker barely noticed. Night had narrowed attention. Only nearby things remained clear. He finished the stack. Recorded the number. The brush moved. Small marks. Steady lines. Hours becoming records. He looked briefly at the board. Morning marks. Afternoon marks. Night marks. All beside one another. The day existed there now. Not as stories. Only as numbers. Simple. Reliable. He set the brush down. Reached for another bundle. This one felt older. The wrapping cloth was softer. The corners rounded. He opened it carefully. Inside, one folded piece sat slightly apart from the others. Not wrong. Only different. He lifted it. The cloth opened. There was a faint crease crossing the middle. Perhaps folded differently long ago. Perhaps unfolded and returned quickly. He smoothed it once with his hand. No reason. Only habit. Then counted. 1, 2, 3. Correct. He folded it neatly. Placed it back. Closed the bundle. The shelf looked peaceful again. He stepped away. Sat briefly. This rest came quietly. No signal. No decision. Only sitting. His feet stayed still. His hands rested together. His shoulders relaxed. The room looked warm now. Not because of temperature. Because of light. Lamplight makes rooms feel closer. Makes work feel slower. Makes ordinary things feel calm. He listened. Nothing. Then after a while the faint sound of the lamp. Tiny. Almost impossible. Then quiet again. Outside, people slept. Someone dreamed. Someone turned and settled. Someone woke briefly and looked at the stars before sleeping again. The baker would rise before dawn. The farmer too. The fisherman. The servant. The child. Tomorrow waited for everyone. But not yet. The worker stood again. Returned to the shelves. Another bundle. Open. Count. 1, 2, 3, 4. Fold. Return. He noticed his movements becoming smaller. More efficient. No extra reach. No extra step. Just enough. Long days teach economy. Not speed. Only smoothness. He tied the cord. Placed the bundle back. Finished. He moved farther down the row. Only a few remained. The shelves looked calmer. Almost sleepy. Rows of pale folded cloth resting quietly. Waiting for tomorrow. Waiting without urgency. Storage rooms never hurry. They simply hold. He opened another bundle. Inside the linen felt slightly cooler. Night had reached even here. He counted slowly. 1, 2. Pause. 3. Correct. Fold. Return. He looked at the records again. Another line completed. Another small order restored. Nothing grand. Only one more ordinary thing left ready for morning. Outside, the Nile continued beneath the stars. Inside, beneath a smaller lamp and among shelves that had grown quiet with the hour, The worker reached gently for the next bundle and continued counting into the calm ancient night. The worker stood beside the shelves and did not move for a moment. Not resting. Not thinking. Only standing. After enough hours, pauses become part of the work. Hands stop. Eyes look. The room continues. The lamp remained steady. Its light had become softer around the edges. Nearby cloth looked warm. Farther shelves disappeared into shadow. Everything unnecessary had faded away. Only the next task remained. He reached toward another bundle. The wrapping cloth felt dry beneath his fingers. The knot opened without effort. Inside rested folded linen stacked with familiar care. He unfolded the first piece. Counted. Folded. Returned. 1. 2. 3. Pause. 4. His voice felt distant now. As though the room counted with him. He continued. Another cloth. Another fold. Another return. The work no longer felt like moving forward. It felt like being inside repetition. Quiet repetition. The kind that asks nothing except attention. Outside, moonlight rested across temple stone. The courtyards looked pale and empty. During the day they held footsteps. Now they held stillness. Doors remained closed. Passages remained dark. The temple looked as though it had folded itself for the night. Only a few lamps remained hidden somewhere inside. One of them here. The worker finished the stack. Recorded the number. The brush moved slowly. Each mark remained neat. No sign of late hours. Records do not show tiredness. Only care. He placed the brush down. Reached for another shelf. This bundle looked untouched for a long time. Dust rested lightly on top. He brushed it away. Opened it. Inside the linen seemed almost undisturbed. The folds held shape. The cloth looked settled. He counted carefully. 1. 2. 3. Correct. He folded each piece exactly as before. Returned them. Closed the wrapping. Some objects spend long periods simply waiting. Not forgotten. Only waiting. He moved to the next. His steps remained quiet. His sandals made almost no sound. The room had become familiar enough that he avoided shelves without looking. He knew distances now. He knew where to stand. Where to turn. Years create quiet knowledge. Outside, the village remained asleep. The air had cooled enough that people sleeping near open spaces breathed more easily. Cooking fires had gone dark. Only occasional lamps remained. The river moved unseen. Somewhere a boat touched shore softly. Then stillness again. The worker sat. Long enough to notice the coolness. His hands rested on his knees. The linen dust had become almost invisible. His shoulders felt different now. Not heavy. Only settled. Like the day had finally arrived inside them. He looked at the shelves. Rows completed. Rows waiting. The room looked peaceful. He wondered briefly whether anyone else noticed rooms like this. Probably. Workers notice ordinary places. People who spend time somewhere begin seeing things others miss. A fold. A repaired corner. A familiar shelf. The way lamplight changes stone. Then the thought passed. He stood. Work remained. Another bundle. Open. Count. 1. 2. 3. 4. Fold. Return. One cloth had been folded unevenly. Not much. Only enough to notice. He unfolded it completely. Smoothed it once. Folded again. Placed it back. There. Finished. No one would know. Tomorrow the shelf would simply feel orderly. He checked the records. Another line completed. His brush moved carefully. The page looked full. Not crowded. Full. A whole day inside small marks. He adjusted the lamp. The flame lowered. Then steadied. The room became softer again. The shadows deepened. The shelves looked farther away. He carried the lamp slightly closer. Light returned. Enough. He opened another bundle. Counted slowly. His eyes stayed on the cloth. His thoughts stayed close. No long thinking. No distant imagining. Only this. Only now. Only folded linen. Outside, stars remained above the dark river. Fields rested. Homes rested. Temple walls rested. Inside, beneath the warm quiet of a small lamp and among shelves slowly becoming complete, the worker reached gently for another bundle and continued counting through the calm hours before morning. The worker stood quietly beside the shelves. For a little while, he did not reach for another bundle. The room remained unchanged. Rows of folded linen rested where they belonged. The records waited beside the lamp. The table held no urgency. Everything seemed settled. He looked across the shelves one last time. Not to admire them. Only to see. Rows completed. Rows ready. Nothing missing. Nothing calling for attention. The day had passed through this room. Morning coolness. Rising heat. Dust in sunlight. Long afternoon hours. Evening shadows. Lamplight. Night. All of it remained quietly inside the shelves and inside the careful lines of the records. He placed the brush down. Adjusted the final bundle. Straightened one corner of cloth without thinking. Then rested his hands. The lamp burned softly. Its light no longer seemed to push against darkness. It simply existed beside it. Outside, the temple slept. The courtyards remained still beneath the night sky. Columns stood quietly. Doors stayed closed. No voices crossed the stone. Only cool air moved slowly where he'd had once rested. Beyond the temple walls, the village slept. Bread ovens had gone cold. Cooking fires had become ash. People rested in homes of mud brick and shade. Children slept deeply. Workers slept heavily. Tomorrow would arrive in its own time. The river continued. Dark water moved beneath the stars. Boats drifted gently where they had been tied. Reeds bent and returned. Nothing hurried. Nothing asked to be remembered. The worker lifted the lamp. Not high. Just enough. He looked once more at the shelves. Pale folded linen rested quietly in rows. Waiting for another day. Waiting without impatience. Waiting the way ordinary things always wait. He turned. His sandals crossed cool stone. Soft steps. Slow steps. The room stayed behind him. At the doorway he paused. Not because there was more work. Only because endings are sometimes quiet enough to notice. Then he stepped out. The lamp moved away. Light became smaller. The shelves softened. Rows disappeared into calm darkness. The room remained. Stone. Linen. Silence. Ready for morning. Outside, the air felt cooler now. The sky stretched over ancient Egypt in silence. The Nile carried reflected stars. The night held everything gently. And somewhere in that ancient quiet, beyond records and folded cloth and the long slow rhythm of ordinary work, the world became still. So the lamp lowered. The footsteps faded. The river moved. And the night carried everything softly into sleep.